October 24th meeting of the East Penn School District Board of School Directors will hereby come to order. Please rise and join me in saluting the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
One of the few times that it's pleasant to be a school director is when you get to honor some of the students in your district who have performed above the mean. And in that case, we're going to proceed to recognize students who are semi-finalists in the 2012 National Merit Scholarship Competition.
It's our pleasure to introduce the students. If you come up one at a time, we want to recognize you, and I know the press likes to take a photo then, so if you can just stand over here. So we're going to start with Jessica Ackerman. Congratulations, Jessica. I think you got to leave. Brian also is captain of the football team, so that's nice. Okay, Lydia Bro. Brittany Gilbert. Jason Graybill. Michelle Lanchi. Michelle Lee. Andrew Luceni. Solon Mao. Karthik Najraj. Okay. Madeline Smith. And Emily Webb. I can tell the audience is that we had an opportunity to meet these outstanding young people, and we heard from each of them as to what their plans are going to be next year. All I can tell you is they're an amazing group of young people who have very clear goals about what they want to do. And I can tell you, listening to them, that their life's interest is going to equal some good for citizens and for this country. And I'm so proud of you. Congratulations and best of wishes next year.
Another group in the audience that we'd also like to recognize, because we have the parents who are here for their National Merit Scholars.
Thank you very much. East Penn Crushers, who likes to get a picture over here for me? It's the custom. So if everybody can come over here. We'll, right over here.
item on the agenda is request to address the board. I don't believe we've received any requests to address the board tonight. All right, we will proceed then on to approval of minutes. Could I have a motion, please? Second. Is there any discussion of approval of the minutes? None appearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the student government report, but we don't seem to have the student government representatives tonight, so we'll forego that also. And we'll move on then to the report of the superintendent of schools, Dr. Thomas Seidenberger.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. First thing, we're going to start with some house cleaning. We're going to remove item 6.3 from the agenda tonight. Instead, we're going to ask some of our leadership team to come up and give the board an update, midpoint review, so to speak, as to where we are with the strategic plan. Last Monday, we did have a meeting with the steering committee, and I think our intent tonight. I do want to assure the board that the Pennsylvania strategic planning tool is very bulky. And I'm not saying anything out of school. It's an extremely delicate document that we're going to upgrade, and we have to make the changes. But one of the things that's very hard pressed to do is to go into the old document, go into the new document, highlight for you where the changes are. So I know some board members would like to see the document. We're certainly glad to do that. But I think importantly, tonight we want to give you an idea of where we are. So maybe I can ask Dr. Torma, Dr. Diagwa, Mrs. Nowak, Mr. Moen, Dr. Mirabella, and Mrs. McCarrick, if they would come up and give us a short presentation on where we are at this point. Or Mr. Moen, starting. Nice to meet you.
Good evening. As per the Pennsylvania Department of Education, strategic planning is a thoughtful, ongoing process that involves multiple stakeholders and seeks to clearly define the mission, vision, and shared values of the local education agency, establish realistic goals consistent with those principles, and develop a plan of action based on the organization's capacity for implementation. The process of planning can also produce a number of corollary benefits, including increased communication and teamwork, as well as efficiencies and effectiveness. Brief background of the strategic plan and the role of the steering committee. In February 2008 through June 2008, 11 meetings of the steering committee were held. The steering committee is comprised of teachers, staff, and administrators from the district, as well as community members and business professionals. Work done ranged from discussions about the professional literature regarding education in the 21st century to the finalization of the vision statement, mission statement, and belief statements for the East Penn School District. On September 8, 2008, the Board of School Directors approved the East Penn School District Strategic Plan. The steering committee reconvened on October 17, 2011, to hear about the progress made since work on the strategic plan began. Also, an overview was provided by 5 administrators to the committee members about the work that will be done from now until 2014. Tonight, you will hear from the same administrators as they provide you with a brief overview of the progress made and the work to be done as the district moves forward with the implementation of the action steps in the plan. Presenting this evening will be Dr. Diagwa for the Academic Standards and Assessment, Professional Education, Mrs. Nowak. Mr. Moen will present Educational Technology, Mrs. McCarrick, Special Education, and Dr. Mirabella, Student Services. This will be a brief summary of the work, again, that's been done thus far since 2008, and a projection to the work to be done until 2014. At this time, I'll introduce Dr. D'Avrinois.
Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Torman mentioned, our Office of Curriculum and Instruction was really responsible for 2 reports. I'll be doing the Academic Standards and Assessment, and Mrs. Nowak will come up to do the Professional Ed report. The Academic Standards and Assessment report, midpoint review, had some language changes from what we knew 3 years ago. And that first change is revolving around the Common Core standards that were implemented by the state of Pennsylvania and ruled on July 2nd of 2010. The state has charged all districts in the state of Pennsylvania to fully implement these Common Core standards by 2013. So we have addressed all the language that was in the previous report to include the Common Core standards. For those who may not be aware, we are one of 45 states to adopt the National Common Core standards, and they were developed with the intent of making the rigor and relevance across the nation equal, so that students, no matter what state they were in, would be college and career ready, so that no matter what their zip code was, they'd be ready to move on. So we have our work cut out for us for the next 3 years in getting ready for the full implementation of the Common Core. The second item that we have that we didn't know about 3 years ago were the Keystone exams. The Keystone exams are end-of-course exams that are now part of the Pennsylvania graduation requirement. These exams are being developed and will be fully implemented by 2015, and they are end-of-course exams for Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, Literature, English Composition, Biology, Chemistry, U.S. History, World History, and Civics and Government. The third major point that we had, that we added language for, although in the report 3 years ago we did mention 21st century skills because it was part of our mission statement, we went into more detail and depth in adding more information regarding the critical thinking, collaboration, and problem solving that we have been doing over the past 3 years, including examples of new programs like STEM, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, the project-based learning that was an initiative last year, and our ongoing integration of technology throughout all curricular areas as technology advances, and we are trying to keep up with it. And then the last bullet is multifaceted. This is online hybrid learning, and you might wonder where we got the hybrid terminology. It's a current term that's coined by the state as a new initiative. It's similar to blended, but the blended is a name that was connected with a company. So the state decided that they didn't want to advertise for any one particular company, so they went with the terminology hybrid learning. And we've been working very closely with Mr. Bone's technology department in coming up with a plan and continuing a plan to eventually have our own hybrid learning here in East Penn. We developed Moodle courses, and Mr. Bone's going to be talking more about them later, but we have not only courses in Moodle for our students, but also courses in Moodle for our teachers. Mrs. Nowak mentioned that as well. Our cyber program, we, since 3 years ago, have joined in a partnership with other Lehigh County schools in a Lehigh County consortium, and we call ours the East Penn Cyber Learning Program. We are in a partnership with VLN, and this year have 20 cyber students enrolled, 11 of whom came from other cyber schools. So we are excited to continue that. But eventually we'd like to get to that third smaller bullet, the hybrid for the future. We'd like to house our own cyber school and not have to partner with anyone, and also eventually get to the point where we can have students not only online, but face-to-face, in school and working out of school, and really be considered a school district for the future. So those were the updates from the academic standards and assessment from what you saw 3 years ago. And now Mrs. Nowak will give you the second report from our office, which is the professional ed report.
Thank you, Dr. Diablo-Mock, everyone. The most significant change in this professional education report is moving from a professional development institute, or PDI, that you will see in the text of the report from 3 years ago, to a school-based or a building-based professional development program. And what this does is it allows for a sharper focus of our professional learning for our faculty as it pertains to not only district initiatives, but also each individual building as well. And the way we'll do this moving forward is through a survey called the Standards Assessment Inventory. It's from Learning Forward. Learning Forward, that's the new name for NSDC, the National Staff Development Council. And it looks to how an organization is aligned to national professional learning standards. So this survey will collect data from teachers by building according to those standards, and then they'll be able to look at that data, and each principal will be able to, along with their building goals and their student achievement goals, as well as any district initiatives, the curriculum revision cycle, and any federal and state mandates, will be able to build sessions really tailored to that particular building while meeting district initiatives, and also allowing some hours for teacher choice as well, as we'll continue to be an Act 48 provider. As you've also heard, Dr. Diablo-Mock talked about 21st century teaching and learning concepts. We have added this language as well into our professional learning program. We did this in order to mirror the language of what our students will be learning. We needed our teachers to be able to provide, we needed to provide training for them as well, so that in every area we are living our mission statement to become collaborators and problem solvers and critical. All those really important 21st century skills. Embedded in that also is training in project-based learning and inquiry-based learning, multidisciplinary learning, differentiating instruction, both enrichment and intervention, and of course technology integration as well. The way that we'll evaluate this building-based professional development program is we still will have evaluations that participants will fill out at the end of each session, but we're going to be moving towards moving that onto Moodle and having our professional development plan on Moodle. And what we'll do is, just in development right now, we're hoping to have it done by December, is the evaluation tool will be online, but it's going to be a two-part one. We're going to find out how the actual session met the needs of that participant, but then that participant will also, 30 days afterwards, log back on, and they will be able to report back to us how they implemented their new learning, to really make sure it's job embedded and it really is getting back to the students. And then the very last part of the professional education plan is a teacher induction report. And we updated the language in the new teacher induction report as well, just like Dr. Diablo-Mock said, for academic standards and assessment, as I said, for the professional education plan, to mirror 21st century teaching and learning concepts. That is threaded through all of our trainings with the new teacher induction program, which isn't just new teachers to the profession, but also teachers that are new to our district. And we'll continue to do this through our 3-day orientation program and through our monthly meetings. And things that we use in those sessions are research, articles, videos, books, speakers, and we also utilize some of the faculty members here in the district that have experience in certain areas as presenters. And we also have added 21st century teaching and learning concepts to the mentor training that the mentors go through, because every first-year teacher is aligned with a mentor, so that they have a common language and they have shared goals. Know exactly what we're telling the mentors they can follow through in their mentoring, and their mentees with their mentoring sessions. Topics that continue to be covered for new teacher induction, along with those 21st century concepts: collaboration, communication, critical problem solving, technology literacy. We also will continue with familiarizing the new teacher with the district policies and practices and resources, instructional strategies, time management, classroom management, technology training, which usually takes place at the IR Training Center, and some of those things are the smart software that they use with the smart boards, Google Docs, Performance Tracker, and Moodle. And then also communication with parents as well, as it's very important, not just for preparing for parent-teacher conferences and all of that, but appropriate email communication, phone calls, and things like that. Lastly, 3 years ago, as also part of new teacher induction, there was a goal to create a multi-year teacher induction program. And we have done that. We are actually in our second year of bringing back year 2 teachers to provide that ongoing support for them. And the way we do that is we meet with them twice a year. We have some face-to-face meeting time, and then they also have some online learning. We post articles for them to read and then respond on a forum on Moodle back and forth to one another, bring them back again, and then we kind of debrief on the articles and their responses to them. They have an opportunity to get together and talk about their second year together, and then we pull out some of the themes that seem to be really important to them through their blogging back and forth. And we will go on and do some further professional development with that. The most recent that we did was Dan Pink's The Science of Motivation with them, of student motivation. So that's it for the professional education report updates. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Mellon. Thank you.
Thank you. If you look behind Mr. Policano, right there we have one of our interactive whiteboards on the stand. To give you an update, over the past 3 years, we've been installing interactive whiteboards throughout the district. I'm here to tell you that we have interactive whiteboards right now in every elementary classroom, all the classrooms at IR, all the classrooms at LMS, and we're in a high school right now going department by department through. Video projectors, like we have in this center right here, we've been installing video projectors starting 3 years ago. Taking the projectors up off the floor, taking the cords up off the floor for safety reasons, and mounting them. I'm here to tell you, as of August of this year, we have a video projector. Every classroom, every building inside the district. And for the next 3 years, we're working on all those other areas, conference rooms and other instructional areas. Wireless connectivity, we started a few years ago. We are completely wireless in every classroom, in every building, throughout the district. The next 3 years, we're going to try to find all those other little areas in between wireless gaps and close it, make sure the signal's strong in every area, in every classroom in the district. Moodle, our virtual learning environment, we've been talking about for years. You've seen some presentations. We're using that over 900 classes, delivering some type of instruction, 1st grade to 12th grade. 900 classes in 3 years. We're using it for professional development and for a future cyber school. It's been a fantastic tool so far. And finally, web-based collaborative tools. Google Docs, web-based collaboration tools, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, getting together. Google Sites, building student websites. ePals, digital pen pal systems. All these systems, web-based, you can see the flow, infrastructure first, wireless. All these virtual learning environment, Moodle, Google, Sites, ePals, everything free. Here, available 24/7. It's been a fantastic 3 years. Thank you very much. And I will turn it over to Eric.
Good evening. The special education plan is a 3-year plan, and it needs to be developed in alignment with the district's strategic plan. Therefore, it was approved back in 2008, and also it was approved in July of 2011. The purpose of the special education plan is to provide students with disabilities the maximum educational benefit in a regular ed or general education setting with specially designed instruction. We have to look at the areas of academics, social, behavioral, and also communication skills. For the special education plan to be approved, it needs to be developed in accordance with specific criteria. And that criteria is early intervening, which is our response to instruction and intervention. And we're currently doing RTII at the elementary level. That is only used for students that potentially have a learning disability. There are other disability categories that we cannot use RTII for, and therefore we have to go right into a multidisciplinary evaluation. For example, the disability categories of autism, intellectually disabled, other health impaired children, or hearing impaired children. The criteria for identifying students with disabilities has changed as far as the timelines go. So we now have, and I say only, 60 calendar days. We used to have 60 school days. Therefore, that clock continues to tick when we're off for holiday break, or we have snow days or things like that. So it makes it a little bit more difficult. We also have to provide students with disabilities with access to a full continuum of educational placements. And that means that we have to provide services at every level. For example, we have 17 learning support classrooms at the elementary level. We have 17 learning support classes at the middle level. We have 17 at the high school level. We have 5 autistic support classes at the elementary level, 2 at the middle level, and we also have 2 at the high school level. And I'd like to add that since we did our report in 2008 compared to 2011, the disability category of autism has risen 93% in our school district. We also need to provide students with the supplementary aids and services, and this means we need to provide them with personal care assistance, we need to provide them with assistive technology. We also need to provide replacement curriculums for students. And since the plan was written in 2008, we have a reading program for the middle and high school level that we did not have before. It's Read 180, and the students have made tremendous progress with that program. At the elementary level, we have SRA programs for reading, math, as well as writing. The other thing is placement of students cannot be based on lack of resources, lack of facilities, lack of staff, or for administrative convenience. So when we talk about unfunded mandates, those are the things that the state looks at in our plan, and we need to have those things in place. We also look at the least restrictive environment for students. And if you go to the next slide, the least restrictive environment for our district is a little bit below the state average. If you look at the 52% of the students that are educated inside the general education environment, 80% or greater, the state average is 63%. We're a little bit below that because we have students placed in outside placements. I will say that that has decreased from 2008. We have 36 students placed in outside placements, and in 2008, we had 53 students. So we're doing a better job of providing the continuum of services. And what that will show you is the students that are placed in those outside programs are placed there for a reason. They're placed there in the most restrictive environment in some cases because we cannot service them in the district, and we really had no choice. The IU programs, we currently have 28 students placed in IU programs, and that remained basically the same since 2008. That number did not waver that much. Okay, thank you. I'd like to turn the presentation over to Dr. Mirabella.
Good evening. 5 areas I'd like to highlight for you this evening regarding changes or updates or what's been going on within the Student Services Department. Specifically with the counselors, in August of 2010, we completed our comprehensive school counseling and guidance program, and that was done with the help of 22 counselors throughout the district. It was also done with the consultation from Dr. Deb Bartley from Kutztown University. And the culmination document, which we have here in front of us, basically is a stem to stern of how the guidance program works within the East Penn School District. And it is a very valuable resource in that as we have new counselors come into the district, whether it be K through 12, they have basically their learning book or their Bible of how we do things here within the East Penn School District, so there's a consistency of services. We really don't miss the opportunity of working with the students. As far as crisis management techniques, we've been working on crisis management techniques and our response to them, and sharpening our response to crisis management in the district. We're looking to train additional flight team members. Flight team members are a core group of individuals that will go out to individual school or location and provide services to the students and the faculty. We're looking to provide that through the CMI, which is the Crisis Management Institute, or NOVA, the National Organization of Victims Assistance. We're also in partnership right now and working, we just started this last week, working with CLIU 21 in developing our own crisis response for the schools in the Lehigh Valley, in which we will do a web-based training, and it will go in different modules that we will create. And then that module, after everyone is done with those modules, they will be able to reconvene then as a group for a couple hours, and they will work out scenarios and put the actual work that they did on the web-based training into reality to make sure they understand the scope and sequence of how to respond. We've also been working with our SAP teams, our student assistance groups, and we had a district-wide, in July 2011, we had a district-wide SAP maintenance day. We received funding through the Stabler Foundation, and we took that funding and we hired the Karen Foundation to come in, and the Karen Foundation provided a full SAP maintenance day for all of the SAP trained members throughout the district. As far as our home and school visitor and what's going on in that department, we've started with time accounting and case logs. Those time and accounting and case logs aren't used really to track what Mrs. Howard is doing. In fact, it's really used for us to be able to follow students and foresee issues and troubleshoot. For instance, some of the issues that we encounter when we're working with our home and school visitors and when we're working with our East Penn population is displacement. We had 4 families displaced by flooding. We have families displaced by fires. We have families displaced through job loss. And we also have homeless students within the East Penn School District. And many of the issues that we encounter a lot are transportation and how we're going to help those students become successful and work to the best of their ability within the educational structure of the East Penn School District. And last but not least, one of the programs that we are very proud of is we partnered a couple of years ago with the Lehigh Valley Hospital and the Lehigh Valley Health Network, and we designed a program called Play All Seasons. And just last Tuesday started our 4th undertaking of this program. And it is a program offered to students K through 5 and in all of our elementary schools, and it is also offered to any students in K through 5 that live within the district, even if they are not district residents. And we invite them to join in this program. And it's a 2-phase program. The first part of the program is exercise in a healthy, fun way. And the second part of it is healthy eating and nutrition. And the nutritionist actually comes in from the hospital and works both with the parents and the students on how to prepare healthy snacks. And this program, as I said, it's our 4th season of doing this program, and it has turned out to be a very good success, and we're very proud of our partnership with Lehigh Valley Hospital to get that up and going. And that's the update for student services.
Thank you. I want to thank each one of you who made a progress report tonight. And as I noted, we will prepare the document for your perusal, hopefully at the next board meeting. And hopefully you will look kindly upon the things that we talked about tonight. You need to know that the updates we gave you tonight were endorsed unanimously by our steering committee. Mrs. Floyd, I want to thank you for your participation.
I would like to comment that what we heard this evening was less than the Reader's Digest condensed version of what was reviewed before the steering committee. And the steering committee is comprised of not only educators and administrators, but people from the community, business people, parents, a whole cross-section, who, in creating the strategic plan, gave many, many hours of their time to help create the vision. And it was really very exciting to hear where we had all come in this very brief time, thanks to the hard work of our administration and staff. And, you know, for those not involved in education, I think that some terms like 21st century learning might seem like a buzzword, particularly those who might have been out of the business community and educational community for a while. But having heard these presentations and still being active in the business community, I absolutely understand the importance of integrating technology into education, because this is the way we do business today. And if we overlook this component or dismiss it as being frivolous or expensive, we are doing a disservice to our students, and in the long run, a disservice to ourselves, because if we do not prepare our students for the workforce, we will be in trouble and in danger in the future. So I just wanted to add my observations and thank you again for your hard work.
Does anyone have any comments or questions for Dr. Seidenberger or Ms. Fuller, our representative on the Strategic Planning Committee? Mr. Earnshaw?
Well, thank you, Mr. Ballard. I'd like to echo my thanks to the team for not only a succinct presentation, but a very good overview of the outstanding work that you've done. I had a few comments about some of the things I heard. The idea behind 21st century learning, as Ms. Fuller just explained in the business world, the people that are hired where I work, which is a Fortune 300 company, virtually everyone who's employed there uses a computer on a daily basis. From the people who drive the delivery trucks, they're using computers to log their deliveries and to get route schedule changes and all kinds of other information. To the people who operate our plants, they're using computers to operate the plants. It's no longer twisting dials and turning valves. That's all controlled by computers. And if they're not computer literate, they are not qualified to work in those positions. Positions that we used to think of, anybody coming out of high school could take that kind of position. Now it requires a little bit more than just your 3 R's, as I've heard some people talk about. So I'm glad to see that focus. One of the things I heard was about the 30-day survey with the job-embedded learning. I think that's fantastic. Where I work, we have to go through a lot of training, mostly safety related. And I once heard a colleague say, the true measure of success of training is if somebody could repeat it back to you several months after taking the training. And I shook my head and I said, no, the true measure is if it changes behavior. So talking about how they're embedding the things that they've learned into their work, I think that's absolutely critical to making that investment in training work for our students. Critical thinking skills, that's a big one. I was in a training class once with a group of professionals. I believe they were all college educated. Many of them had advanced degrees. All of them were in professional type jobs. And the course was on persuasion. We watched a 10-minute segment of a film by Al Gore, An Inconvenient Truth. And regardless of what you think of the premise of the movie, the 10 minutes that we were shown, we were asked to think about the presentation skills that he used and the persuasion skills that he used. And then we discussed it at each table. And the people at my table were all nodding their heads saying, wow, that was really persuasive. And they were talking about how convincing the facts were. And when it got to me, I said, well, these are classic propaganda techniques. And they looked at me like I'd slapped them. I said, look, he started by talking about people smoking and his sister smoking, and then started talking about global warming. I said, there's no relation between an individual's habits and that. Whether it's fact or not, he's using these techniques to for you to develop sympathy for him, so you're more receptive to the things he says. And they all were stunned that this had gone completely over their heads, and they'd accepted the message without doing any critical thinking at all. In these days of websites, of dubious heritage, of 24/7 news channels with talking heads shouting at each other, we absolutely have to teach these skills to our students so that they are thinking about what they're hearing and asking those questions. And I'm really glad that's driving some of our thinking. I'll be brief about some of the other things I heard. The technology integration is wonderful, especially the fact that so many of the tools we're using are free. That's a tremendous resource to have 900 classes operating on Moodle in some capacity. Fantastic. My own children have logged into Moodle from home to refer to information from their classes or to work on their homework. I think that's just great. Special education. we could have a long discussion about that. As was stated by Mrs. Pekarik, these are mandates. These are not things that we're doing because we think they're nice to do. They are the right things to do for our students. There's no question that we should be looking out for our students and educating them to the best of their ability. But let's not kid ourselves. These are not inexpensive things. They are required by law, and if we do not do them, not only are we doing our students a disservice, we are violating the law. So we have to continue investing there. We have to work as hard as we can with those students to maximize their abilities, and I'm glad to see the focus there. And once again, I thank you all for the very wonderful presentation. I'm looking forward to seeing the document in full. Thank you, Mr. Ballard.
Any other comments? I had one question of Ms. Carrick. I think my count was 60 classrooms being used for special education. Is that correct? 51 classrooms for...
That is correct.
And you referenced CFR. For people who don't know that, that's Code of Federal Regulations. That is the federal law that requires us to provide those services.
That is accurate.
And is it the state requirement or the federal requirement that the maximum amount of students in a special education class is 9 students?
Well, it's the federal regulations, but it really depends on the type of classroom. For autistic and also for emotionally disabled students, the cap is 8. We can go up to 20 for students with learning disabilities.
Okay, so basically for the special education within East Penn, not counting the ones we have sent out, we have 60 classrooms with a maximum of 8 or 9 students in them throughout the district.
We have 14 with a maximum of 8.
Okay.
That's not learning support. That's autistic support and emotional support.
14 with 8, and then the others are, the 51 would be with 20 students?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to get that straight. Any other questions? Go ahead, Dr. Simon, make your report.
Thank you. Much like we gave accommodations to our outstanding students tonight, I received a wonderful letter from the College Board thanking Steve Kutz, a high school Spanish teacher, for his work in grading Spanish AP exams last year. Steve does a nice job, and certainly it's a great experience, and I know he appreciates the support he receives. So congratulations to Steve for his work. Also, the district received an honorable mention for our calendar in the Pennsylvania School Boards Association competition on different varieties of communication. So we're very happy, and I certainly want to thank Mrs. Blois for her efforts in that regard. I think the big news that hit today in education is that the Senate Education Committee is going to take a vote tomorrow on SB1 vouchers. I certainly would encourage each member of the public, each board member, to contact Senator Brown, no matter how you stand on this issue. This is a hot button topic in the states, and I think it behooves all of us to at least let our legislators know where we stand in this issue. I had an opportunity to participate last Wednesday in Terry Madonna's overview at the Pennsylvania School Boards and PASA conference in Hershey. And again, it's very clear that through polling throughout the state that the majority of Pennsylvanians do not support vouchers. So no matter how you stand in this issue, if you could take a couple moments to write to Senator Brown. He is our local representative who sits on the Senate Education Committee. Prior to tonight's meeting, we gave you a copy of the annual report. We'll put this on the district website for public members to access, and this was one of my goals when I came to the district, so it's the second year we've done this, and I'm very pleased with the information that shows you a synopsis of what we can consider to be highlights of the 2010 2011 school year. And again, I want to thank Mrs. Bloys and all the department leaders who contribute. We certainly can't do this with just one person participating. There are many administrators and staff members who contributed to this document. So I think it's improved from last year, and we'll continue to improve that each year that we have the opportunity to do this for the public.
Who wants to put a copy in the municipal library?
Absolutely. We will do that. I want to remind the board and parents who are here tonight, we are moving on home access. Prior to tonight's meeting, we had a sign-up evening and afternoon for parents. I don't know for quite at 75%, but all the principals will be sending a customized message out Wednesday afternoon around 6 o'clock or Wednesday evening, reminding parents to sign up. Parents can come to the individual school and sign up. Each school now has a copy of the password, so parents all they have to do is bring their identification, and they're online. And again, our goal is to have as many parents registered as we possibly can. Those parents who do not register will get a hard copy report card, but they're also going to get a highly personalized letter asking them to please consider getting registered again. This is part of our budget plan this year to make us a paperless district as much as we possibly can. Several of you asked to talk about the ref pay agenda item. Let me tell you what this is succinctly. An opportunity to talk to Mr. Ramel last week about this. First of all, it is an optional program for referees, but we're very encouraged throughout District 11 that most of the referees have signed up for this service. Basically how it works. Most of our employees now have direct deposit. This is sort of like a direct deposit for referees. You can't participate unless you register, and so the referees register with ref pay. Otherwise, we would be tracking now referees, what banks they have. Can you imagine? We write currently about 600 checks a year for officials. That would be for all middle school sports, high school sports, whatever. So the bottom line is we will pay 67 cents per transaction, so whatever referee gets paid. But think about this, and we don't have a calculation, but I'm pretty confident we're going to save a significant amount of money, and that is we no longer have to process that payment claim. We no longer have to cut a check, put an envelope, and possibly mail it out. So I think just in terms of personnel handling that, there's going to be some savings there, and we'll certainly save a minimum of envelopes and stamps. And again, it fits in with our philosophy of trying to make this as paperless as possible. The other thing that I'm led to believe is that ref pay will then create the 1099s. And again, that will remove another job that our business department does. So ref pay for that 67-cent transaction, they'll keep a running account, and so at the end of the fiscal year, they will then create the 1099s for all the referees, and referees do get 1099s. Used to get paid in cash as a ref. And the other thing is, if you've ever been to an athletic event, it's a real pain, because I had to do this at some point in my career. I was coaching baseball. The coaches used to have to give out the checks, and you're angry at a ref, you don't want to hand him a check. But at the end of the game, but now we stop. We don't have to have Mr. Ramel or Mr. Murray running after referees to make a check. And lots of times, through no fault of their own, referees change and we get a different ref at a game. Meanwhile, we cut a check and we do another check and void that and all that other stuff. We don't have to do. Now, Sean will have the record, who's there, press a button, and the transaction's made. And again, we think this is going to be a very easy program to use. Plus, I want to assure the board that most of the school districts in Lehigh County, District 11, are moving in this direction. Bethlehem just adopted it. Northern Northwestern Lehigh, and most of the school districts are going in this way. And again, I think it's good because it continues along with upgrading the services for referees. As you know, they have security background and checks, And so I think this streamlines the number of people that handle that remuneration for referees. So, any questions? I think Mr. Fisher has also reviewed the contract. So. Okay. Next thing, we're very pleased to tell you, as you know, one of our #1 projects this year is rounds, instructional rounds. And I'm happy to tell you that Dr. Torma and Mr. Pepperata have been invited to Amherst in the near future, sometime in November, to actually participate in a rounds regarding Amherst High School. So that's how this process works. Even though Dr. Torma and Mr. Pepperata are not associated with Amherst, they nonetheless will come in, they'll have a theory of action, they'll have some problems to look at, they'll have some areas, and they'll participate in observation, which most people still are trying to wrestle with. The observation and the analysis are really the key components of rounds. So we're very excited about. And at some point, I would love to return the favor and invite some people from Amherst here to participate in our teams. Not only will they participate, but Dr. Torma and Mr. Pepperata will have an opportunity to debrief with other members of the rounds team from Amherst. So we're excited about that. I want to just talk about 2 other items before we get into class size, and that is we do have to participate with other districts in the state on PIM snapshots, and so the next 2 items are directly related to, sort of related to class size, but in a year's time, I do want to inform you that we're looking at the variables we have to submit to the State Department. We now have, in 1 year's time, 157 more students who are identified as low income. Which 157 students in 1 year. We also have an additional 15 students who are limited English proficient. So those are some things that I think you need to file away as we develop a budget this year that has to serve all sorts of students. Now, more specifically, Mrs. Picard gave me interesting information this afternoon, and I just want to share that with you. That since July 1st, correct? Since we started a new fiscal year, a new calendar year in education, we have, are you ready for this? 93 new special needs students in the district. 93 special needs students since July 1st. We have 16 students in the autistic category, and again, I think Mrs. Picard reminded you that we've had a 93% increase in autistic students since 2008. With those kind of numbers, you can see why. We had 13 new students who were classified as other health impaired. Mrs. Picard talked about personal care. These are students with not only academic and instructional needs, but also health-related needs as well. Specific learning disabilities, we have 24 of those students fitting that category, 3 students under mental retardation, 7 under emotional disturbance, 28 speech or language, 1 hearing, and 1 orthopedic. So 93 new students this year. Okay, now, what I want to do with this, an update on the class size report, is to walk you through the documents, but I think it's important that we remind ourselves of what this is. Number one, my goal is to make sure that every board member understands what is. And if we all can get a common understanding of that, then we certainly can move on and have a dialogue. Number two, we're not going to make any decisions tonight. But, again, I think there's a lot of information, and we certainly would welcome any conversation or any question that you might have. The other thing I want to remind you is that I don't quite remember exactly when I was looking for my former superintendent reports, and honestly I couldn't find it. But I do remember last year I gave you an excerpt from a study concluded by Pennsylvania School Boards Association last year that indicated that we are below average in terms of ratio, teachers to students, and also administrators to students. And I know I made the comment that people think we're fat. We are not fat. So I think with information like that, I don't think there's anyone that should be startled at that in some cases we're starting to look very nervously at some class sizes throughout the district. The other thing I think it's important moving forward that everyone keeps in mind what the index is. The index is 1.7, correct? And I think in talking, Mrs. Sertival, and again, I'm not going to, this is not a drop dead number, but rather an estimate. This will fluctuate. What does that mean in terms of dollars? That means about close to $1.6 million, maybe not quite. Also rumors floating around that we may get an increase in basic subsidies from the governor's time around. I'll believe it when I see it. But at 2%, what does that mean? So that means around another $206,000. So probably, you know, if you look at potential revenues, that's kind of sparking again about $1.8 or $1.9 million, depending on where we are. So I think looking at over the last couple of years, we've been below the state average in terms of staff. We're kind of locked in with funding. So where are we today? So if you take out the documents I provided for you, let's look at the first page, and I just want to hit the highlights of that. I'll give you an idea from 2001 to recently in October where we are. If you look at 6,745 students until recently, 8,011, that represents about almost a 19% increase in students in that time frame. That's a significant amount of students. But what we've tried to do in our reports is isolate what's happening this year. Let's look at last year and the year before. And why do I say that? Because those are the 3 years that we really have been under where we are in permissible levels for the budget. I think 2 years ago, we had a permissible index of 4.1. We went to, I think, 3.9. Last year, the year before, with exceptions, we were able to go to a certain figure. We came in under that. And then last year, as everyone recalls, we were able to go just about a little bit over 5%, and we came in a budget of 1.8. So I think you need to keep all those things in mind as we look at the numbers. Again, if you look at the last 3 years, the most significant growth is at the middle school level, 83 students. If you look at the high school, in a 3-year period, we've lost 76 students. And elementary has remained pretty consistent, only a differential of 4 students in 3 years. So, face value, those numbers don't seem overwhelming, and to be honest with you, they are not. So, let's take a look at another report. I want to thank Dr. Mirabella. And these are documents that we did not give to you, but I think in having conversations internally, I think it's important. These 2 documents will, again, I think kind of confirm what we're talking about as we look for a reason and we look for a rationale and we sort of figure out what's going on here. So on the first page, what we're looking at is elementary enrollment comparison by grade, where we were in June last year to where we are now. In other words, let's just look at sheer numbers in the district, comparing kindergarten last year or in June, kindergarten this year. Again, what did we end with in a kindergarten? What did we start with? Now, I'm not talking about a group of kids are moving on. That's the next chart. So just where are we now? Comparing grade levels in June to where we are right now. And so we've done that for every elementary school. So if you look at the chart, Alberta's, 56, 67, a difference of 11 more kids than we had at the end of last year and this year in Alberta's. What's fascinating, if you look at that first column for kindergarten, district-wide, we are down 71 students in kindergarten in October as compared to what we had in June last year. That's a significant number. On the other hand, let's look and see what happened to first grade. across the district, we have grown. Our first grades last year, at the end of the year, this year, there's a difference of 34 plus, so a swing. And I'm not going to read every number to you, but look at second grade, down 63 students. So everyone's starting to get the idea that this is very unpredictable, and that we have waves, some people call them bubbles, whatever you want to call them, it's not consistent across the district. Third grade, we're up 93. Fourth grade down 24, and fifth grade down 2. So you can see, grand total, what we had at the end of June and what we have right now, we're down about 33 students in elementary. So let's take a look at the next chart. And let's see what's happened as these boys and girls have moved, okay? This is the movement. The kids that have moved from kindergarten to first grade. Everybody got that? From first grade, second grade, so forth and so on. And here's where we see, again, a tremendous swing. And so, when we looked at what did we end the year with in June, and what did we have in October? And you can see, again, that these are kindergarten kids moving to first grade. And the jump has been a significant one. 83 more students showed up in first grade than what we serviced in kindergarten last year. I don't know if it's an absolute number, but the numbers are that. So, and I know we had a parent out here that was concerned about Willow Lane, but if everybody would just focus, in a very incredible short period of time, and we believe these numbers are really from August to October, we've seen an increase in first grades of 27 students. Shoemaker 25, McCungie 15, and Jefferson 11. Now, traditionally, we've done a lot of work and tried to anticipate this every year. We know that there are a lot of young boys and girls who are educated in all-day Ks elsewhere. We also know that we've seen some students enroll from some religious schools. But I think this year, having those high numbers, specifically in Shoemaker, McCungie, and Willow Lane, were very surprising to us. So, people are looking for what happened. Well, we got a lot of kids we were just certainly not anticipating. And so, if you look at grade 1 to grade 2, you can see that very small differential, only 4 students. You look at grade 2 to 3, and again, another small differential, 10 kids. 4 and 10 are very manageable numbers spread all across the district. You look at 4th grade, only differential of 2. And again, 5th grade, maybe one could say you raise a couple eyebrows, and when we do go back into the schools and see some elevated class sizes at some 5th grades, you can see the differential 19 students. So, that's what has appeared in our district since June to October. But, going forward, one of the things that comes to my mind, at least I look at, are the number of students we have registered in kindergarten right now and the number of students we have in first grade. There's a differential of 154 students. 154 less students in kindergarten than grade 1. Now, again, we're probably going to have to go in and look at some data. And so the question is, for us, the challenge for us as administrators and principals, what's happening? So we're going to have to go in and dig deep in that data and look at it and really do an analysis of what differentials have we had, let's say over the last 3 or 4 years, from what the end of the results of kindergarten and what's happening in first grade. Now, even giving, saying, okay, maybe another 83 kids will come, that's still a significant difference in next year's first grade. It's almost 70 kids that may not, we might have less than what we had this year. So again, when you look at the data, it's just not the numbers, it's trying to find patterns which become extremely difficult. The other thing I want to remind the board is, and I had a parent meeting last week, and Dr. Norman, Mrs. Nowak, in a test, I got affirmation around the room. When I was talking, I said to the parents, remember what we said about redistricting? It would last for about, what, 2 years? They all nodded. They all nodded. So, we have a very fluid population. So, let's look at the data. And what we did was, again, I want to thank Ms. Nowak and Dr. Porma for their color coding, which we hope makes it easier for you to look at the data. And let me explain what we tried to look at. One of the things, people say your class size is going up. Well, let's look at 3-year patterns. The orange, anytime you see orange, that means there's a consistent growth for a 3-year period. Some years we have a high number, and go to a low number, and then go up. We're not looking at that. We're looking at consistent growth over a 3-year period. So on the first page, you will see that we've had consistent growth only in Albertus in grade 3. The rest of the time, it has fluctuated in Jefferson, Lincoln, and those 2 schools. Go to the next page. Now you start to see some issues. And you see some orange in McCungie, Shoemaker, and Willow Lane. But when you total it, there's 42 different combinations of kids in elementary, 42 different, 7 schools, 6 grade levels. You're only showing growth in 9 areas. So, again, is it a problem? Of course it's a problem, but is it pervasive? I'm not so sure that it is. So we're going to have to look and see what those numbers may translate going forward as we move those students up. Now we always move up students when we do predictors of class size and teacher assignments. We always do that. So at some point, next month or 2, we'll try to anticipate what those class sizes will look like next year. We have not done that. It's a lot of work. And then you have to look at, again, historical patterns of how many kids we lost. So why don't I stop there and ask any questions on the elementary class sizes, what you have in front of you.
Is this helpful? Does anyone have any questions about that?
Is this helpful?
Dr. Seidenberger, would there be any indication in this data when you mentioned redistricting that we should be looking at redistricting again?
Well, there's always a possibility. But one of the things that I would recommend that we do, our staff, Mr. Bell, and I'm glad you brought that up, is, I don't know if you recall, we spent a lot of time in redistricting, drilling down to individual neighborhoods. Now, I don't want to be misquoted. My friends in the press, I don't want to be misquoted, please. But one of the things I think we probably have to do is look and see where we are in neighborhoods. And I'm not suggesting anything at this point other than looking at the data. We built our assumptions a couple years on what neighborhoods would look like. And we really spent a lot of time drilling down. So one of the things we're going to work with Mr. Clancy, Mr. Mirabella, and our staff, working with First Student to update those numbers. But again, you're looking at a considerable amount of time and effort to do that, working back with our principals. So, but I certainly feel that we ought to do that before we make any decisions going forward. So any other questions on what you have in front of you for the elementary?
Mrs. Fuller?
Not a question, just a statement. I think you're making these graphs available to the press. And
the public. And these will go on our website too.
And the question might be, why is there no kindergarten in 2009 in Country, Shoemaker, and West Coastville?
They didn't have
it. That they were all gathered in one kindergarten.
We'll put an asterisk there. That yes, Lower McCungie Elementary School was a kindergarten center at those days. Of course, Willow Lane's only existence for two years. I mean, I for one want to look and see what's going on. Shoemaker, remember, we moved in Hills of Lockridge, and that has a tendency to be very fluid housing. What's interesting to me, and again, we don't have the data, but we did have meetings with real estate agents last year, remember? We went out, and I don't know, just third of all, I don't see a big uptick in transfer taxes, do you? No, that's how, you got to think like this, and I don't see a big uptick, do you? So, but what's going on in Willow Lane? I don't know. We'll have to see. Is it mostly kids moving in from private schools or religious schools? We'll have to take a look at it now. One of the things we've done is ask Mrs. Evans to start tracking that. We can do that, but that's for a later date. But I just want to give you this information tonight. Any other questions in elementary? Yes.
Have you done the statistical analysis to indicate whether there's any significant deviation from year to year in the class sizes in any one of these particular schools?
No. What you have is a basic, just a compilation tonight. We'll certainly look at all that and spend more time with it, but I was more interested in giving you folks a status report where we are. No, to answer your question, we haven't drilled down as deep as we possibly can go. Now, we're going to move in and do secondary high school before the middle school. What we wanted to do, and this is not reflective of every class in the high school. We would be here for days doing that. What we want to look at were the core areas, and I think most people agree that that's a fair look at class size. What are those critical components, as Dr. D'Ivanwah talked about, in terms of graduation requirements? So what we did was looked at English, social studies, math, science, and additional graduation requirements. So what you have in terms of the high school are the basic components that you need, with some electives obviously, but what you need to graduate from Emmaus High School. So let's look at the English department. Again, the orange. We wanted to see, okay, is it getting worse here? Stabilized? The same? And so if you look at, there's 17 potential courses that happened, that are going on this year. 3 of those show a consistent growth pattern over the last 3 years. And they would be just 9th grade English honors. And you can see the class size, it has zoomed up a little bit from 20 to 27 in a 3-year period. 10th grade English, 24 to 28, and 10th grade English honors, 20 to 29. People want to know why? Because we've reduced staff. Not reduced staff, we haven't replaced people. Not so much move-ins are, as we demonstrated earlier, our high school population has decreased, and therefore we looked at staffing. Let's look at social studies. Again, here you have a total of 18 different courses. 5 have shown a consistent pattern of growth over the last 3 years. 23 to 27 in American Studies, 21 to 26 in World Studies, 25 to 27, which is not that bad, in Government and Economics. U.S. History, there's a big shift, but that's AP, and that's optional. I could change every year, 14 to 26. And I think the good news is we still offer the AP courses, so you have 19 to 27. So possibly we need to look at those 2 areas in AP. Emmaus High School, again in mathematics, total of 18 courses. We see a consistent increase in 3 of those classes over a 3-year period. If you look at 3, that's not bad compared to social studies. So I think we're holding our own. Analytical and calculus, again AP, maybe that shows the largest increase from 13 to 22. But again, I'm very pleased as superintendent we're able to offer those AP courses. And then let's look at science. 26 courses, which I think also a good indicator. We're offering 26 science courses. It gives our kids a lot of flexibility. And in 4 of those areas, we've shown some increases over a period. Oceanography barely tipping in a 2 point, or 2 students more, but some growth in biology honors, a little more perhaps in physics, and a little bit more in physics CAP. And then in the additional course areas, and there's a smattering of courses there for you, and a lot of different things, we've shown really no marketable increase over the last 3 years. Average is 17.4 2 years ago to 18.7. So I think the high school's not in bad shape at all. Any questions on any of the high school courses? Dr. Norman can help me out here. If we can't answer them for you tonight, we'll certainly get them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. This is one of those subjects where we can get easily lost in the data, swimming around, and we could really worry about the increase in oceanography students from 25 to 26 to 27. I don't get too worked up about the addition of an average of 2 students per period. 27 is getting a little bit on the large size, but it should still be manageable, I would think, for high school students. Maybe I'm just an idealist, I don't know. But what I'm really pleased to see is the growth in advanced placement course attendance, where I'm seeing more and more students taking these advanced placement courses and then going on to take those AP tests. When I think about the economic benefit that the community gets from that, the students when they enroll in college get a lot, can get a lot of college credits from those AP tests. I remember at the Meet the Teacher night last month, was it earlier this month? I guess it was last month at the high school. One of the teachers said that he had students literally starting as juniors coming out of high school because they'd taken so many AP tests and gotten so much credit at college for it. And when a normal 4-year university, it's probably somewhere in the $25,000 to $55,000 range for a year. That economic benefit, $50,000 to $90,000 of economic benefit to our community by offering those courses. So when we look at it, yes, it can be expensive to offer some of these courses, but the payoff is fabulous. From any return on investment metric we would look at, I think we are doing our students a great service and our community a great service by offering these. I'm really pleased that we continue. So.
And I think, excuse me, as a superintendent, I've had situations where we've put in a low number requirement. And being reasonable people, there's only one place where you see a class that's offered that's under 10, and that's advanced calculus, topics, and honors. And I think those people heard the students tonight talk about their hopes and dreams. I agree with you, Mr. Earnshaw. The young men and the young women that we saw tonight, they're going to repay the investment happening in their courses. Now, go ahead. Any other questions on high school? No other questions. Okay, they're kind of cut you off. Now, let me just read, when we go into the world of a middle school, it's an interesting place to be. The rules of engagement, and everybody has to remember this. We do teaming in middle schools. And again, not even remotely going down the path of suggesting that we look at anything other than teaming at this point. So, it's one of the things I want to remind the board is that when you look at middle schools, you really need to look at not so much 24 or 25, you need to look at blocks of about 75 students. 75 to possibly 90 students that a team of 3 might be responsible for. So it's just not that easy doing middle school. And one of the things I want to remind you, that when we get into the middle school numbers, 2 years ago, we came up with a redistricting plan. Does everyone remember last year at this time? I made a recommendation that we weren't going to, or I think a year and a half ago, we weren't going to implement the middle school redistricting because I just didn't feel that we had the financial wherewithal to build in a new team of teachers, most likely at IR, to handle some of the growth. So we have some different colors for you to take a look at. You probably need to spend some time looking at the middle school data, and that's why I want to thank Dr. Torma for making this as simple as possible to read. The red simply means, if people want to compare the 2 middle schools, red, IR has a higher per student average, and you're going to see a lot of red there. At the same time, the good news is Lower McCounty Middle School, their enrollment has decreased over a period of time, which makes their class size a little more attractive. And so when we looked at declining enrollments there, that could be one rationale. Again, the orange, consistent growth. And then the blue or aqua color, that shows you where IR has less students per class than Lower McCounty Middle School. Now again, I also want to remind you that we did some wonderful things for our middle school students, and I know a lot of you were interested in what we do for students who want to be challenged, and I know there were a lot of questions early this year about some changes in our math program. I think you should be all very pleased to see that we do offer language arts honors, social studies honors, algebra 1, some science honors. So we do offer our students some challenging opportunities in the middle school, and those numbers are reflected in the report. This is the most complex area to work in, since we do work in teams. So if you don't have any questions, this is the basic data, and trying to put this into an analysis, I think we can do more things for you. I want you to know we're going to spend a lot of time on this. I think there's a tendency to think that the district is going through another growth spurt, and that would be a wrong conclusion. I think probably at a minimum, painting with a broad brush, have our kids resituate themselves in certain elementary schools. It's probably true. Won't know that for a fact until we take a look at neighborhoods. I'm curious to see where we've had the actual move-ins. We'll know that when we get the data. But on average, our numbers have been fairly consistent over a 3-year period. Now, please recall my concerns for the budget discussion last year. I worried about the unknowns. And I do think I did speak about, we have a history of some big increases from kindergarten to first grade. They showed up this year. I think another thing I mentioned last year when we had the budget deliberations, something that none of us control, that is special education. And again, when we look at, what's the number again? 93 students. That does have an impact, especially under Gaskins, which, and Dr. to be, soon to be Dr. Pagaric. When she talks about students being in regular education classes, we made a commitment to that. So those kind of students also have a bearing on what we're doing with staff development. And then, when you look at the other number I gave you, 157 students below income, tragically, unfortunately, one can make a strong argument that low income is a predictor of students needing some additional basic skill work, unfortunately. not something I want to talk about necessarily, but that's pretty much an indicator. So that's where we are tonight. As Mr. Ballard asked us, I think we can drill down, do some more work, and I would be happy to answer any of the questions that the board has at this point.
Does anyone have questions for Dr. Seidenberg? I have just an observation, Dr. Seidenberg. If you looked across these numbers, I see isolated pockets of where there may be a concern about some class sizes, which look like an issue of possibly involving redistricting. But honestly, the numbers that are there from year to year, as you compare the 3 years, don't seem to be all that different. Am I seeing anything that's out there?
No, I'm trying to be delicate because I know there's some, I said we've been pretty consistent, and look at the numbers. We've tried to be practical the last 3 years, and I think in the budget presentations, everybody's fully aware of that. Last year, we didn't fill a certain amount of positions, and we've been downsizing, and I think when you see these numbers, it reflects pretty much what we've been doing here for the last 3 years anyway. Again, I look at the papers and see some people that 22, 23. Well, my guess is that they're going to be a little hard-pressed to do the kind of work that we've been doing. I know Mr. Richwine has brought up every year in the budget since I've been here that on one hand we're very frugal, on the other hand we're still high-performing. So there's no easy answers for all this. But I would agree with that. We have to look at the pockets because I think it's the pockets that have some parents a little concerned. And certainly no one's going to deny that when you get 27 new kids in Laurel Lane in first grade over a short period of time, that's a little hard to deal with.
Okay. I also attended a session at the PSBA meeting that talked about some of the things that are happening in school districts, and one of them is that quite a number of school districts are finding more and more people within their district who are not really eligible to be obtaining services from the school district. It's more than athletic recruiting or anything like that. It is actually people attempting to migrate over borders. When was the last time we conducted a comprehensive evaluation about whether or not we have a problem?
I can tell you not since I've been here. I can't speak to before I was here. All I know is in Brick, I had Cindy Doyle. She was wonderful. She tracked them down. She more than paid for her salary. We don't have this. She was like a kind of quasi social worker, but mostly a truant person. And I can tell you, in my last district, we were able to find some families that didn't belong there and work out a settlement. They paid us back over a period of time. No, but I can't say that we've done that since I've been here. I don't think we have any dedicated personnel to do that at this point in time. I know Whitehall has engaged a part-time person to start knocking on doors. The only thing I can tell you is we tried to do a cyber school audit about 3 years ago. Jim Frank does a marvelous job of checking our bricks and mortar cyber students. But to answer your question, not anything scientific, not anything in an organized way.
Would it be possible for the administration to get back to us with a report on whether or not it looks to you like that might be something cost-effective for us to do?
Well, I can tell you that I would certainly, I think we ought to go out and research, but, we get rumors all the time. And we do have a lot of transition students. I know one of the other things we want to take a look at are 1302s. The board doesn't understand, and I'm not going to go educational jargon. That is kids who are here under guardianship arrangement. But that's might be one of the areas we look at to make sure those kids are actually there. And again, the vouchers are going to come in and things like that. Maybe it's a good idea we come back with some kind of recommendation to look at some of this stuff.
Do you have any other questions for Dr. Seidenberger about any of the aspects of the class size report or any of the data that's presented to us. Thank you, Dr. Seidenberger. Does that conclude your report?
That concludes my superintendent's report. Sorry it took so long, but these were very important topics.
Okay, the next item is the 6.2 personnel. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion on any of the items in the personnel report? None appearing. Ms. Birdsall, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Ms. Gannon.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller.
Aye.
Mr. Palmerano.
Aye.
Mr. Richland.
Aye.
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde. Aye. Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Number 6.3 has been withdrawn. That moves us on to facilities. Can I have a motion on 7.1, please? Dr. Seidenberger, would you like to go over this item?
7.1.
Yes.
I'm going to let Mr. Delancey refer to him for this, since he's been working.
As the board remembers, went through a review process with Cambridge Schools and came up with an agreed upon lease arrangement. Unfortunately, one of the sections included transportation to Albertus, which we had excluded. It was still included in the original document. So what we are doing at this point is removing Albertus from East Penn transportation responsibility.
Okay. Are there any questions or discussion on this motion? Ms. Birdsall, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Hyde. Aye. Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Ms. Gannon.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller.
Aye.
Mr. Palmerano.
Aye.
Mr. Richland.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Legislative, well, Dr. Seidenberger alluded to the high priority matter of the moment. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, from the back room, we suddenly got notice that the Education Committee had suddenly brought back Senate Bill 1, was considering amendments, and was planning to vote on it tomorrow. This is less than 24 hours notice. I'm making proposals that are a major change to the way education is funded in the Commonwealth. And there's certainly been no public discussion of any of these items outside what's going to be the committee meeting tomorrow. And basically this is, we believe, somewhat related to the governor's finally coming out with his proposal on what he would support on vouchers. And as Dr. Seidenberger indicated, it's time for everybody to start talking to their senators and eventually to the representatives because the way things are stacked in that committee, it's very likely that something will come out of it to the floor, probably on another expedient basis with very little debate and very little coverage by the press of exactly what's happening. And I think not only do the people in the education community have a stake in this, but I think the public does too. Polls have shown, as has been mentioned, that between 61 and 66% of the public don't want vouchers to pay for, use public funds to pay for private education. There's some more things that the public needs to be concerned about also, because these bills, as I've seen them, have been crafted and have been advertised to the voucher community as not requiring or not having any regulation by the state over the private and parochial schools' operations, which probably should concern them in the long run, because I don't believe anybody will escape regulation once they start taking public money, but that's for the long run. In the short term, they've been told that they won't get any, so that there won't be opportunities for the public to go in and comment at private schools about how they're spending public money. There won't be the opportunity to examine their books like they can do now with public schools. The private and parochial schools are not being required to take the PSSA test like all the public schools. They're just said some assessment. Well, I can have some assessment by somebody walking into the building and say, that looks good to me. That's not an assessment. not when they're spending $8,000 or more on of public money on supposedly educating a student. If the PSSAs are good for public schools to measure their performance and be castigated in the public and the press about whether or not they're making marks on the PSSA, then every other school that receives public money also ought to have to take the same test, in my opinion. And also that the schools will not have to account to anybody for the money. They're not going to be audited, as far as I can determine, by the Auditor General like all public schools are. So the public really needs to weigh in with their legislators on this particular issue across the board, because they're going to be suckered by the legislature by this voucher bill. And let me tell you where I think the whole thing is going. Seeing what the bill is for public education, and having successfully for years scammed the public by sending all the mandates down to the public schools and the school boards and making them raise local property taxes to the point where it's getting to be unconscionable for the amount of burden that's being on simply on the property tax. They're now reaching the point where they realize they can't get away with this anymore. So now they got to find some other way that they can maintain their state-paid jobs by saying, I didn't raise your taxes. So now they sell this voucher bill, and you will find later on down the road that they'll be telling you, oh, your student didn't get a good education? Oh, sorry, you made the wrong choice of school. It will now be your problem. You won't be able to complain to anybody. You made the choice. You picked this. Parents are supposed to follow this, etc., etc. It's a scam. It's a pure and utter scam, because they don't want to take the hard steps necessary to do the reforms necessary to solve the problem. There's a story, if you'll pardon me, I have to do this because I have to get this story out. It's called, and it has no other connotation other than the true story itself. It's called Moving the Raccoons. We have a process in the nuclear industry called root cause analysis, where you're supposed to delve down to the basic cause of a problem and determine what the root cause is and then fix the root cause. When you don't do that, you end up wasting a lot of money. And one particular power plant had a problem that suddenly developed with their security system. They had raccoons coming into the security fence and setting off the alarms. And they kept coming, 2 or 3 a day, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. So somebody had the brilliant idea, we'll solve this problem, we'll trap the raccoons, we'll move them 100 miles away, and our problem will be gone. Well, they trapped the raccoons, they moved them 100 miles away, and 30 days later the problem came back. At that point, they really got into the root cause analysis. Why are the raccoons coming in? And they found out that there had been a change in their garbage disposal service. Because of the new security requirements that had been put in on the plant, it was getting more and more expensive and difficult to bring a garbage truck into the plant through the fence. So they were collecting garbage for a longer period of time in an outside burial spot inside the fence before they would bring a truck in, instead of 2 or 3 times a week, once a week, to pick up this garbage. It was the garbage that was attracting the raccoons. So once they moved the garbage outside the fence, the raccoons stopped coming in. Well, what I'm talking about vouchers is they're attempting to move the raccoons. They haven't got any idea what's going to solve the problems of some of these failing schools. And if there's a problem with economics or parental concern or crime or something else that's affecting the students in those areas, just tell me how giving somebody a voucher and saying you might be able to move out of the area or you might not, how is that going to solve the problem? If you just move the student with the problem to another school, unless there's something else being done, how does just moving them solve the problem? So that's what I'm saying. They're out there moving the raccoons, and they're not solving the basic problem with this voucher stuff, and they're suckering the public, and it's just getting so frustrating to talk to people. I've had one of our state legislatures characterize public education as a government school monopoly. That has a couple of connotations behind it. Government school, the government is forcing our kids to learn certain things. Well, yeah, that's what public education is. The community decides on a common set of standards to educate people, and they make sure everybody gets educated to that. That's called public education. And then the other part of that is monopoly. And when I challenged this legislator on the fact that he didn't know what the definition of a monopoly was, because we've always had private education that competed against the public schools, he got incensed that I would challenge him on this, his declaration that public schools were monopoly. Well, if he'd really carefully crafted it, he could have said, yeah, public schools have a monopoly on tax money, but that's the only monopoly we have. And the reason we have a monopoly on tax money is because the public decides how their public money is going to be spent, and that is, by definition, a public monopoly. And what we're getting is a lot of people who are attempting half-baked solutions to try to get themselves out of, in my opinion, a bind of character, because they don't have the intestinal fortitude to stand up and solve the problem. They won't do anything with sales tax or income tax to replace the property tax, because somebody's ox is going to be gored by one of those other taxes, and they don't want those complaints. They don't want to have property taxes go up, because that'll get people mad. So it's just bouncing around trying to find some solution, like gambling they tried last time, trying to find some solution that will not make people mad at them for dealing with their tax problems. And that's just a fundamental lack of character. My comment is that many of us grew up with a book called Profiles in Courage by John Kennedy. And he was a senator, and he wrote a book about senators who had had to stand up and do something unpopular because it was right. My observation today is, if he were alive today and trying to write it about any of our legislators on any of the legislative levels, he couldn't find the examples to use in his book. He wouldn't get one chapter, because nobody is standing up for what's right in many of these issues. And sorry to be on the soapbox, but this latest thing of slipping the voucher bill out all of a sudden has just gotten me just boiling over. Because if anything deserves a very thorough vetting in the public, it's something as fundamental as going from public education to some kind of fee-for-service voucher program, depending on private schools and other entities like parochial schools to provide education in this commonwealth. When 175 plus years ago, we had a debate right here in Pennsylvania that settled the issue that we needed public education. And if you go back and read that speech from Thaddeus Stevens about people complaining about paying for the education of other people's children and not wanting to spend this amount of money for public good and all of that other kind of stuff, it's the same stuff that's been going on for 175 years. But in that time, we've gone from outhouses and horse and buggies to modern sanitary facilities, and we've landed men on the moon, all based on public education. And it hasn't changed that much, and we can still deliver that same product as we saw tonight with the numbers of students that excelled on the National Merit Scholarship thing. So please, get out there. Everybody you know, every parent you know, every teacher you know, every administrator, contact your state legislator and tell them why, and ask them, why are you doing this? What do you think it will solve? How is it going to be accountable? And how is it fair to public education to be doing this? Thanks, I'll get off my soapbox. Any other questions about legislative matters? Okay, we have an item.
I said I don't dare ask.
We have an item for the Carbon-Lehigh Intermediate Union. As you know, Mr. Ridgewine will be leaving the board at the end of his term, and we need to replace him on the intermediate unit. So can I have a motion, please, on number 9?
Second.
Is there any commentary on this? Ms. Fuller has graciously agreed to be appointed to this position, and I thank her for that volunteering.
Let me just say, I cannot possibly replace Mr. Richwine. I'm simply taking the seat he is vacating.
Mr. Crenshaw.
Ms. Fuller, I'm wondering, has your arm healed yet from the thorough twisting? No, I'm teasing. I would like to thank you for stepping forward. Serving on the LCTI board together, I know what a commitment, an extra commitment of time that has been. I can only imagine that serving on the IU board will entail at least a similar amount of time, and I very much appreciate your willingness to shoulder that burden.
No other comment appearing. Ms. Birdsall, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Polacano.
Aye.
Mr. Richmond.
Aye.
Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Ms. Rhodes.
Aye.
Ms. Gabbard.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller.
Aye.
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde. Aye. Mr. Bauer.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you again. I will also remind you that we have an LCTI position open also that people should be volunteering. I've had one person indicate an interest in that. We could use another perhaps. So if anybody is interested in that, please contact me, because soon after the reorganization meeting, we're going to have to take care of that one also. Business operations, is there any objection to moving all 4 of these items together?
I'd like to hold out number 2, please.
Number 2, all right, that will be, we'll look at 1, 3, and 4. Any objection to that? Can we have a motion, please?
So moved.
All right, is there any discussion on items 1, 3, and 4? None appearing. Ms. Birdsall, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde. Aye. Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Ms. Gabbard.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller.
Aye.
Mr. Polacano.
Aye.
Mr. Richmond.
Aye.
Mr. Bauer.
Aye.
9 ayes.
All right, then can I have a motion for 10.2, please?
So moved.
Second. All right, discussion on item 10.2. Mr. Earnshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. I had a number of concerns in reading this contract. I just like to hear the administration's how they feel about it. Paragraph 13 in the agreement says that RefPay does not currently charge a fee to make payments from your account, and yet we heard this evening that it's a 67-cent transaction fee for each one. But then it says, however, you acknowledge that RefPay reserves the right to change its fee structure at any time. So apparently it changed its fee structure after writing this paragraph. I guess my concern is that anytime they want, they can increase the fees. And they're not required, they're required to give advance notice in item 16. They can either post it on their website, email it to you, or mail it to your street address. And they'll consider it received by us within 24 hours of the time it's posted on the website or emailed to us. You can email it to us, or I think this outfit is out west, so they could email it to us on Friday at 5 p.m. their time, which is 6 p.m. our time. It takes effect Saturday. We're processing payments. Suddenly they've increased their fees. It just seems to me like we're giving them a lot of power over the fee structure. We authorize payments, those fees will come out of our account. Have we looked at their history of changing their fee structure? Do we have confidence that they're not going to just, every few months decide to have a 10% increase in price, or 20 or 120?
I can't say that we have, Mr. Earnshaw.
All right,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead, please.
No, I can't say that we have done that exhaustive research.
All right, so that's one concern. The other concern is, item number 33, which is their indemnification paragraph. I've read a lot of indemnity clauses. This one was the least understandable, perhaps the most impenetrable one I've ever had the misfortune of reading. It seems awfully broad. I'm not sure if Mr. Fisher is comfortable with the amount of control we're ceding to them and what we're indemnifying them for.
Well, my comment to the administration was, I
bank inadvertently pays out somebody, you are protected in that manner. That's of some consequence. But a rep pays basically off limits. They wash themselves in any liability.
I don't know, have we talked to other districts that are using this? How much history do they have?
I think this is a fairly new process. As I related, most of the districts are moving towards this, so I don't know if there's any great history, to be honest with you. This is coming basically from the athletic directors behind Valley. But certainly we can spend more time with it. That's the pleasure of the board.
Well, I love the idea that it'll save us processing fees. We won't be issuing hundreds of checks a year. We can save some of our staff time in preparing it. We won't have the mailing and all the other hassles involved. It seems like a sound economic decision under the current structure of their agreement. But since they can change it at any time, I don't know, it could become uneconomical for us. And I just like to see how much history they have, how long they've been in business. I looked at their website. I didn't really get a feeling for that. So I don't know what comfort level we have with this company.
I guess the conversation that our athletic director has had with Northwestern Lehigh, Northern Lehigh, and Whitehall, they have had no problems at all and are very happy with it. So that's a limited sample, but it's a positive limited sample.
Mr. Fisher, can I ask you whether you have, as our solicitor, any reservations about entering into this contract?
The contract is legal. My comment to the administration was real simple, was I presume you vetted it out because it is an extremely broad identification process. It's not my prerogative to say. I don't know what other districts' experience is. And I made the same observation that fees can change as well at any time.
Okay, and we can get out of this agreement at any time by...
You can get out of it by simply closing your account, removing the money from the account. So that is some consolation. You're not locked into a year or anything like that.
And specifically in number 25, it says they will provide 30 days prior notice of substantial change. So depending on what a substantial change is, we could be arguing that we might get 30 days change notice of a fee increase.
Whether that's,
Again,
I'm not sure that that's, depending on the fee increase, it might not even be substantial.
and there's no penalty for us getting out of there.
There is no penalty.
Okay. So we can end this at any time.
That's correct.
Are there any other questions for the administration or the solicitor on this? Mr. Policano.
There's another item, 15 fees to pay. It seems like they were getting paid via interest on funds that we put in the trust fund. So is that additional to the other fees we were talking about before? Or is that the way they...
That's just simply how we're getting.
They're getting their...
That's the way they get paid. I agree with you.
Ms. Fuller?
Well, understanding that we can terminate this arrangement at any time, I feel comfortable voting in favor of this.
Ms. Gannon?
Yeah, I just have a question. Roughly, how much money annually do you spend on our equivalent of paying referees?
Between $14,000 and $15,000 per sports season. So $14,500 for the fall, another $14,500 for the winter, $14,500 for the spring. Now it's $100 plus or minus for each season.
Gradations, varsity, JV, middle school, there's always different. Each referee gets paid a different amount. Football is one amount, basketball.
Total amount is about $52,000.
We're not talking about it.
No.
Our budget. And the other thing is that, is there any oversight on our part as to what, ref pay is doing? In other words, will we be looking over their transactions at any point, or I'm just wondering how this all works?
Well, first of all, one of the things I want to remind the board, this is not necessarily, this is referees are asking for this kind of service from school districts as well. So I'm sure if someone didn't get paid, like anyone else, we would hear about it from that particular referee. That's the...
Well, I'm wondering about the other case. What about somebody getting paid who didn't referee?
Well, that necessarily wouldn't happen because people in charge, in this case, Mr. Murray, he's the one that validates who the referees are, and he is the one that presses the button that tells ref pay basically who is. And remember, you can only be registered through ref pay to get paid. If someone's not on a list, they would get paid in a traditional way with a check, like we always do.
Okay, so we do have some.
So we have the control. So official B would not necessarily get paid. If that were the case, that would be Mr. Murray's mistake, and that would be easy to find that out.
Okay, all right. Well, given that, I think I can move this out of it. Well, the rest.
Anyone else? Mr. Richmond?
Well, I think the fact that we initiate paying the referees and they can't just take money out of our account without our knowledge, we have that control. And if the individual in charge of that, as long as he's aware of any changes that would be detrimental to the district, can always bring that to the attention of the higher ups, and we can make a decision at that time whether to continue or not. So I would support this.
Mr. Earnshaw?
If everyone else has had a chance, the burden of monitoring this falls directly on the district personnel. They don't send us statements, they don't notify us of any transactions, so it's up to our staff to go in and monitor this and reconcile this on a regular basis. So if we're talking hundreds of transactions to the tune of,
About 600.
$43,000 worth of transactions per year, we're going to lose some of the efficiencies that we're gaining by having to monitor this. So as long as the administration feels we have the staff time available to make regular reviews of this, to audit this, to make sure that they're not making mistakes, to make sure that they're not increasing their fees, then I'll support it. If it's one of these things we're going to set up and it goes to the bottom of everybody's priority list to review it, then I'm not in favor of supporting it. So if this becomes something that's a regular part of somebody's duties that they're doing on a scheduled basis, then I'm okay with supporting it.
Anybody else?
So I guess, are we willing to do that, make that commitment of staff time and effort?
Well, I think this falls under the purview of the athletic office, and they would be doing this only.
I would just point out as one side comment that I presume that somebody is monitoring what referees we have and
Yes.
making lists of who's getting paid and that kind of thing already. So there's some overlap with that already.
And remember that we don't hire a referee unless they've had a security check as well. So, yes, there is a process for monitoring who's working a game.
Anything else?
Right now, I believe we approve, do we approve that the board approves payments from the athletic fund? So are we going to be approving these retroactively after they've been processed through the system? Are we going to queue them up? How does that work in relation to our responsibilities?
I presume there'd be some kind of deposit to that fund that is used for the referees, and we would approve that deposit. So we'd know how much money is going in per interval replenishment. Is there a comment you'd like to make, Mr. Clancy?
I'm not sure if it's by account for the athletic account or if it's by actual referee. So I'd have to check.
Okay. Mr. Richwine?
I just happened to turn to the fund accounting check summary, and it looks like a whole list of officials being paid. Description of purchase, JV, Liberty, Varsity Football Freedom, all these names, and they're in the 54, 71, 69. So it already looks like we've already approved payment for the officials. I assume it will be.
Those are all the checks we're drawing.
Yeah. I mean, that's one page. I don't know how many more pages there are, but it's 2 pages. So, I mean, we're already approving them. I assume that we'd be approving them going forward.
Well, there might, one observation though, if it changes to ref pay, we will be putting an amount into ref pay. We won't necessarily have names associated with that, so we may not know which referees we're authorizing payment for. If that's a concern for the board, we would have to address that some other way.
You can clarify that.
Anything else? Not appearing, Ms. Birdsall, you call the roll.
Mr. Ballard, I think I'd like to make a motion to table this until our next meeting, so we have a chance to do just a little more due diligence on it.
Is there a second to
I
Ms.?
second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded, motion to table, not discussable, I believe. So we'll now have a vote. Ms. Birdsall, you call the roll, please, on a motion to table this.
Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Ms. Abbott.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller. Mr. Napolitano.
Aye.
Mr. Richmond.
Aye.
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde. Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
10 ayes.
Okay, it'll be tabled presumably to the next meeting, which will be the first meeting in November, excuse me, first meeting in November. Okay. Is there any new business to come before the board at this time?
I just wanted to mention when we were honoring our students tonight, in past years, I've always had difficulty finding information as to the number of semifinalists, and I was able to get a copy of the semifinalists for this year in the state of Pennsylvania, and checking the various schools in Lehigh and Northampton County. The Mass High School had half of those students who qualified in Lehigh County, 11 out of 22. And adding in the 8 from Northampton County, we had 11 out of 30 in a 2-county area who qualified as national merit semifinalists. We obviously were far and away the highest number of students. And the only one close to us is a slightly larger district who had less students. But to put in perspective, I think this is basically the top 0.5% qualify as a semifinalist, which if you applied that to our roughly 650 students, we should be expected to have had 3. We had 11. And I think that speaks volumes of not only our students, and I told a couple sets of parents tonight that yes, the school does something, but it's really their kids who are the ones that who did it. But I can't help but think that the fact that Mass High School students consistently have more National Merit semifinalists than any other school district in the area. And I think that speaks volumes of the students and of the staff. And I just thought I'd point that out since, as I've said in the past, this information used to be regularly reported. Now it's hidden away because it's good news, and everybody knows that no one wants to hear about good news in public education.
Mr. Earnshaw? I'd like to thank the board for their support in sending 3 of us to the Legislative Policy Council at the ESBA conference on Thursday last week. We had a rather lively session with a few technology glitches, but I think we've adopted a good platform for the year.
I did pick up some information from vendors there, including a company that does do residence verification, so I'll pass that along to Dr. Seidenberger. I don't know if there's somebody we should consider working with. I have no idea what it costs, but if it's fairly minimal cost, then we can uncover students who are attending here who don't live.
Also, what I'll do is also talk to Mr. Corby about what White House does.
That'd be great.
And we can at least compare and contrast what a service may cost as opposed to a person. And I had a person on salary and bread. Made a difference. At least the public knew there was someone.
Anything else? Prior to this meeting, we had a clear session to deal with real estate, litigation, and confidentiality. So I will now entertain a motion to adjourn. Well, let's see, we have an EHS drama department presenting The Crucible, the 27th, 28th, and 29th. I recommend you all go. And there will be a Veterans Day program at 9:30 and 1 p.m. at Lower McCungie Middle School Auditorium. And the week of November 14th, we'll have elementary parent-teacher conferences at 1:30 p.m. and an early dismissal for elementary students. And our next board meeting is Monday, November 14th. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Second. All those in favor? Aye. The meeting is adjourned.